Welcome to Break the Cycle with Bethany Dotson, the podcast for high-achieving professional women who struggle with codependency, attracting emotionally unavailable partners, and who repeat dysfunctional patterns in love. I'm your host, Bethany Dotson, and if you want to learn more about how to break your cycle in love, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and be the first to know when a new episode drops. I'll see you inside. Hey everybody, Bethany Dotson, relationship coach and trauma-sensitive yoga therapist for high-achieving professional women. And I'm going to talk to you today about the right way to heal your codependency. So I'll talk about codependency in just a second. This is going to be for you if you are a single or newly divorced professional woman who in her career and other areas of your life, you're driven, you're ambitious, you've got your shit together. And when it comes to your love life, you consistently meet same pattern, different face, emotionally unavailable people, addicted people, narcissistic people. It probably bleeds into your work life, coworkers, bosses, family, friends, but your relationship scenario is like the one major glaring issue. So you may identify with being codependent and you may wonder, how am I ever going to get over this pattern? And I'm going to talk to you about that today. So the first thing I want to just cover is, what is codependency? So back in the 80s, codependency was defined primarily for people who were partners or spouses of alcoholics or partners who had a drug addiction, and the spouses or the family members, parents, etc., would enable the addict to continue using, helping him get alcohol, drugs, putting a roof over his or her head. And it became this very enmeshed relationship. But over time, the definition of codependency has gotten a little bit broader and more generalized and focused on a certain set of behaviors and traits that show up in your intimate relationships. Not just intimate relationships. It can certainly show up with your kids if you've got kids and you feel like you're constantly fixing their problems. But the crux of it is that you may be codependent if you wind up in relationships where the other person becomes the focal point of your life and the other person's bad behavior becomes your mission to help them resolve that, to the point where you lose yourself, you lose your sense of identity, you lose your sense of your own dreams and ambitions in that process, and you put all of your eggs in one basket on this. This has got to work out. I am bound and determined this relationship is going to work out. And so when you are codependent, it can be extremely debilitating on other areas of your life, but more notably your emotional well-being, your mental health. And it can cause you, even if you leave the relationship, say for instance, if you were with a narcissistic partner, or even just I talk to a lot of women and they've spent many decades, 30, 40 years in a marriage, and they recently learned that their partner was narcissistic. The statistics are that I think it's way less than 10% of the population is narcissistic. We all have narcissistic traits to some degree. I want to caution you, if you feel that everybody you meet is a narcissist, that it can be an overblown word, and not everybody that you meet is really narcissistic. They just have wounding, and so sometimes that can come out as selfish behavior. Anyway, back on topic. So I want to talk about a couple of things that may be blocking you from actually healing this pattern, and then what we do here inside of Break the Cycle that helps our clients break that addiction of being focused on another person. The first myth that I want to bust is that simply learning about what codependency is and reading books, Codependent No More, Facing Love Addiction, reading books and talking about it with your therapist, or even talking about it in a 12-step CODA meeting, are enough to help you change that behavior. And I want to talk about why this is false. And before I say that, these things, talk therapy, reading books, even going to CODA meetings, are not necessarily, they're not bad, right? These are great options. But what I have found in my experience personally and in working with clients is that these things give you a logical understanding of your behavior. And a logical awareness, logical up here, is the first step, but they often stop there. So you might logically understand that you're a fixer and you're a caretaker, and you gain that knowledge after several years in therapy or reading a lot of books. But then several more years goes by and you're still in a draining, toxic job environment, or you continue to date projects and potential. So you gain the logical awareness back here somewhere in the past, but you're still making the same dysfunctional choices. Why is that? Codependency at its core is usually rooted in unhealed relational trauma, complex trauma. And what is complex trauma? It's the mini traumas that happen in the walls of a relationship. And sometimes this relationship trauma is from your childhood, your early life conditioning with parents or caregivers. Maybe they were unavailable. Maybe you had a parent who was an addict. Maybe you had a parent who was really hard on you and expected you to be perfect, and you could never please or make them happy. So that's one way. The other way is if you just stay in one unhealthy relationship, can really do a number on your mental and your emotional health, and kind of leave this imprint, this scar that causes you to doubt yourself moving forward and settle and make dysfunctional choices in future relationships. So the trauma is not the trauma that creates codependency, is usually from abandonment or fears of rejection. When you find somebody that needs your help, it can feel really good to help somebody fix their problems. It can feel really good to help somebody realize their potential, or it can buy you a sense of security. A lot of people who get into codependent relationships on some deeper level feel like they are different. They feel like they don't belong. They feel like somewhere inside they're not lovable. Somewhere there's something wrong with them. You might not say these things out loud, but you might question yourself on the inside. The voice in your mind might be telling you that on a frequent basis. So when you find a partner who is usually very gung-ho about you and really into you, and then you realize there's some issues here, what the natural thing you might do is to believe that you can help that person fix their problems. And then that creates like a snowball effect where the unhealthy behavior gets greater and greater. You have to ignore more of your own intuition to try to solve this person's behavior. And then you begin losing yourself in that relationship. So the underlying trauma from research and what people are discovering in trauma recovery these days, it's not just up here in your head. Trauma surfaces, especially if you get the same type of person over and over in your relationships. Unhealed trauma from your past comes out in your relationships, and it comes out as a reaction, as an emotional reaction. Sometimes people think, oh, I'm going to remember this moment that I had in my childhood when this and this happened, and then I'm going to be healed. And what's really going on is that, number one, it's like a large percent, like 70 to 80% of the memories you have from your past are not even accurate anymore, because your brain changes over the years. And then the second thing is that trauma researchers from a brain neurological level have discovered that when you logically analyze a past event and you try to heal the trauma from that event by logically analyzing it, you just reinforce the same trauma mapping, the wiring, the brain wiring in your brain. You don't create anything. You don't change anything. So this is why you can go to a CODA group, where you can read a book, you can have an insight, you can highlight it, you can dog ear it. You can go to your therapist and talk about the time when you were 12 and be like, oh yeah, then this makes total sense. This is why I attract people like this. And you can feel better in the moment, but it's not deep enough to actually help you heal those ingrained, memorized, automatic emotional reactions that come up when you're triggered or come up when you're activated in intimate relationships. And there's nothing like an intimate relationship that's going to bring up all of your old unhealed wounding. So the first myth that I want to bust is that just simply learning about it, learning about codependency is not enough. You really need to be healing the underlying trauma and using evidence-based methods to do that. I'll talk about that later, in order to change your emotional reactions and to change your emotional home, as I call it. So that's the first myth. The second myth or mistake that I see a lot of people getting into when they're trying to heal is that they actually over identify with being a codependent. So I talk with a lot of women who they're well into their 50s, sometimes 60s. They've never had a great romantic relationship. They've done a ton of work on themselves. They still avoid dating, or they still wind up with unhealthy partners. And the primary story is something's wrong with me. And then when I talk to them, they are really focused on how codependent they are. I'm a codependent. I know this about myself. And listen, there's the first step in any 12-step program. The first step in your recovery is admitting that you have a problem. So yes, it can be great to identifying that you are codependent or that you have codependent traits is the first step. But some people get so attached to that definition of themselves that they wear it like a badge of honor. And what happens, and I see this a lot too in women who are survivors of narcissistic abuse, all they have ever known in their life are unhealthy relationships. And that defines them. They wear, I'm a survivor of narcissistic abuse like a badge of honor. My ex betrayed me. They wear that like a badge of honor. And so if you wear your codependency like a badge of honor, what can happen is that you may unconsciously use that title or that label on yourself to hold back in life, hold back trying again in relationships, hold back dating again, hold back in pursuing a dream career or starting your business. Because usually when people behind the label of I'm a codependent or behind the label of I'm a narcissistic abuse survivor, especially if you've never had a good relationship, is the big granddaddy label of something's wrong with me. And if you inherently feel and believe subconsciously that something is wrong with you, you will continue to meet circumstances and people that just reinforce that, because you attract what you are. You attract, water seeks its own level. You attract what you are, not what you want. So over identifying with being a codependent can make you a match for somebody else who has their own emotional issues and who's incapable of giving you what you need. The other thing that I want to say here too is that being codependent can, the pattern of wanting to fix somebody or wanting to help somebody is really good in a lot of professions, right? There's a lot of great careers that are centered around helping people achieve a result. In your romantic relationships, when you're trying to help your partner achieve something or trying to help him or her fix their behavior, what this is really about is about you buying yourself some security in that relationship, you getting away from the feeling of something's wrong with me, and you seeking somebody outside of yourself to fill up that void. And the moment, like if you've ever had a narcissistic relationship, those relationships start off, you think you've met your soulmate. The love bombing, you on a gut level, you're like, this is probably moving too fast. I don't know. This seems too good to be true. Wise words, by the way, listen to that. As the relationship starts to inevitably deteriorate, that person is no longer who you thought they were. And because you inherently feel like something's wrong with you, you're going to cling harder to the image and the fantasy that you've built in your mind of what you could be together. And then this creates that enmeshed, codependent, toxic relationship dynamic. So when you're so focused on helping your partners fix themselves or get back to the way that it was in the beginning, what's really happening is that you are just continuing to run away from yourself. You're continuing to avoid the feelings of abandonment or rejection, and you're trying to avoid that ultimate feeling of something's wrong with me. And whenever you do that, whenever you avoid anything, whenever you avoid your feelings, and by the way, most of the women that I work with are masters at avoiding their feelings. They ignore red flags when they're out of a toxic relationship. They ignore their feelings by staying chronically busy. They don't know how to trust themselves. They don't know what their intuition feels like anymore. They're constantly doubting themselves. This is all a trauma response. But when you chronically avoid yourself, you will continue to attract partners who avoid you as well. They're incapable of meeting you halfway because you are not being fully honest and authentic in your own skin. So that's myth number 2, is over identifying with being a codependent and kind of wearing that like a badge of honor and allowing that consciously or unconsciously to limit you in life. So that's myth number 3. Myth number, big mistake, myth number 3 that I want to cover is not spending enough quality time alone. So you may be alone right now. You may not be in a relationship. You might be really happy on your own, but I want to talk about the difference here. I work a lot with women who they've spent 30 years in a marriage and they knew in the very beginning that it wasn't a good person, but because of the conditioning they had from their childhood, and because they didn't want to let anybody down by getting a divorce, or they didn't want to break up their family, they chose to stay. And then now they're in their 50s or 60s, and this is the first time they've ever been alone in their life. So what happens here is that a lot of times women will try to fill that time. So again, it goes back to this void, this hole in yourself, this wounding in yourself. What women in this situation will do is that they'll try to fill their time with a lot of excess busyness, because living in a state of chaos, and if you're in a toxic relationship, it's definitely chaotic. Living with that extra noise becomes really comfortable. It's familiar. So you'll try to be a workaholic, maybe be a shopaholic, stay chronically busy. 90% of the women that I talk to feel the loneliest and their mind starts spinning the most right before bed every night. They do whatever they can to stay busy and keep their focus distracted off of themselves and off of their problems, off of their feelings. And then at the end of the day, they come home, they don't have anything left to do. The house is empty. Their kids are with their dad, or their kids have moved out. They don't have their ex and the trauma bond happening there anymore. And they're just left with their feelings that they've been running away from all these years. And all of a sudden that loneliness starts surfacing. So if you don't know how to spend quality time alone, and when I say quality time alone, I do not mean by distracting yourself. It's very likely that you're just going to continue to repeat the same pattern, because what's happening is that by distracting yourself with busyness and work and shopping and spending and sleeping with other people that are not right for you, you're just continuing to create and generate that chaos. You don't have the toxic relationship anymore to do that. You're now recreating that on your own. And again, going back to the fundamental thing, you're just running away from yourself. And when you run away from yourself and you're unable to spend quality time alone, you don't know really who you are anymore. And the biggest catastrophe of being a codependent and getting into codependent relationships is that you completely lose yourself. You don't know who you are anymore. And so if you continue, maybe you left the relationship or the marriage and now it's been years and you still don't know who you are anymore. The moment you get into another relationship, what do you think is going to happen? Because you don't have that foundation in yourself. You may be working all the time and on some level feeling depleted, but you still don't know who you are. And in order to have any kind of healthy relationship, you have to know who you are. And the best way to do that is by spending quality time alone. One of the best ways to do that. So let's talk about how to change the right way to heal your codependency. Books are great, right? It's a start, but there's two fundamental things that need to happen to change your behavior long-term. You have to change how you're thinking and you're feeling. And if you have codependency and a pattern of unhealthy relationships, you need to heal the complex trauma. So this means rewiring how your brain is wired and then changing your emotional reactions every day. So some people do EMDR for, they had a really bad abusive relationship, they got into a car accident. When you have complex trauma, there's so many little traumatic episodes that happen over a prolonged period of time that EMDR can sometimes be because if you had stuff that happened 40 years ago, you might not remember it. So the best way to start is by taking you where you are and helping you change how you're thinking today, and understanding that thinking has been created by past trauma, and then help you change how you're feeling every day starting from today forward. So the way that we do it here in Break the Cycle is we give our clients daily somatic therapy protocols. Somatic therapy is building the awareness of your body, what's happening in your body. So we use evidence-based methods like trauma-informed yoga, heart math tools, somatic experiencing, breath work, guided meditations. All of these things combined rewire how you think up here, and then it rewires your emotional reactions, especially in the context of relationships. So that's great. That helps you change the patterns in here, but you still need to change your behavior out here, make different choices. So the second part of this is learning to stretch your comfort zone every day, every week. So when people have unhealthy relationships, they tend to shrink their life. Their life becomes, they've had so much unpredictability and on again, off again, and turmoil and chaos in their relationships that they try to seek and they try to control that by being codependent and trying to fix the other person and buying into the fantasy, the addictive fantasy of what the relationship could be. That they leave, they don't know who they are anymore. And so the world feels scary. The future feels scary. The future feels uncertain. What if I die alone? What if I meet another narcissist when I do decide to date again? So the fear that you continue to live with can cause you to block out possibility. And when people block out possibility and they feel ashamed for staying so long, and they inherently feel like something's wrong with them and that nobody will love them, their life gets like this. So it's not just enough to change how you think and feel every day. You have to actually make different choices. And so in Break the Cycle, making different choices looks like taking yourself on dates every week. One of the first assignments that I give my clients is to take yourself on a fancy dinner date all by yourself, no distractions, no phone, no tablet, no book, no nothing. And just notice how you feel in that moment. Are you anxious? Are you fearful? Great. Can you use some of your somatic work that we taught you in the previous week to regulate your nervous system so that you show up as a different person? So you have to stretch and widen your window of tolerance. And this, most people know what they need to do in order to change, but they don't do it. Why? Because the comfort zone is so intoxicating. It's a lot easier to procrastinate and tell yourself, one day when I have a better job and when I'm making more money and when I lose 20 more pounds and I did this and this happens, then I'll make those changes. And the irony is that you've already been telling yourself that same sack of lies for years in a toxic relationship to justify staying. So in order to change and actually heal your codependency, number one, you need to be consistent. Number two, you need to be healing your trauma, the underlying psychological mapping, emotional mapping that causes you to want to leap outside of yourself and fix other people to try to fill up the hole in here. And then third, you need to be stretching your comfort zone every week, because the type of relationship that you want and the life that you really want is going to be far out of your comfort zone. You may want a healthy relationship, but right now you're not doing the things and you're not thinking and feeling in the ways that are going to lead you to that relationship. And a lot of people know on some level that they're the problem, but they just don't know what exactly to fix or how exactly to change that. And this is why it can be so beneficial to work with a coach or work with a mentor who can see your patterns more clearly than you can and give you the tools and the roadmap to get from point A, I'm stuck, I'm ruminating about my ex, I feel like a piece of shit, I don't know if I'm ever going to meet anybody, to B, feeling confident every day, feeling at peace every day, no longer thinking about your ex, feeling happy every day, dating confidently, attracting a healthy partner. If you are single, you're newly divorced, maybe you've been single for a long time and you want a relationship, but you've gotten really comfortably numb in being a workaholic and just avoiding yourself and avoiding your love life completely. And you know that you have codependent traits. A lot of times I was one of these people. I discovered I was codependent and I was like, no, I'm not. I'm independent. I am really independent. Like I am driven. I've got my ish together. I have goals. I don't need a relationship. And that's not how codependency is defined. You can be single for many years, and I was, and then get into a relationship that you feel is your soulmate, and it's a complete toxic, dysfunctional crap show, and you want to fix that person. So it doesn't matter how much time off you take. This is another fallacy. People think that, oh, I just need to take enough. If I take enough time off dating, then surely the next person I date, or surely I will have done enough work on myself, whatever that looks like, to attract a healthy partner. And I've talked with way too many women to know that you can take 10 years off dating and the first person that you fall for is another narcissistic type. So you need to be healing your trauma, working a proven plan if you want to see tangible results that last. So if you're single, newly divorced, you're professional, you've got your ish together, you recognize, yes, I'm codependent. Yes, I have a really hard time telling people no. I have a hard time trusting myself. I realized I was codependent in my relationship or my marriage, but I'm probably codependent with my kids. I enable them. I enable my coworkers. I don't have boundaries at work. If this is you and you realize that this is sucking you dry of your emotional energy, it may be impacting your physical health at this point, and you're ready to make some significant changes by properly healing the root cause and changing your behavior so that you're more in alignment with a healthy partner and the life that you want, then I invite you to book a free breakthrough call. Go to bethanydotson.com/talk, and we will have a very honest conversation about how we might be able to change your life. If we discover on that call that we're not the best solution for you, we're going to steer you in the next step. So maybe you need a different type of therapy. Maybe you need to ask yourself some questions for a moment and sit with those. You need to be 100% single, meaning you're not hoping to make it work with your ex. You might be ruminating about your ex, but the bigger part of you knows that you are absolutely done. Second thing, you need to be stable in other areas of your life. You've got a stable job, stable home environment, right? You didn't just leave a domestic violence shelter. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but complex trauma is healed best when other areas of your life are stable and there's no surprises here. And then finally, preferably we want to see that you've had some prior therapy, just because we are dealing with trauma recovery. And sometimes trauma recovery or trauma in and of itself can bring things like bipolar disorder, borderline personality disorder. And so we want to, when you have that foundation of already having worked with somebody, you know yourself a little bit better, it makes for a better candidate for coaching, which is all about moving you forward, taking you where you are here and moving you forward. If that's you, book a call. Spots are limited. They are first come, first serve. And we would be honored to talk to you about changing your life. I will talk to you very soon. Take care. Thank you for tuning in to today's show. A brand new episode drops each week. Be sure to click and subscribe. And remember, healing trauma, codependency, and your lifelong pattern in love does not happen by itself. You need expert guidance and evidence-based methods. And I have helped hundreds of incredible women from all over the country heal betrayal trauma and reclaim their confidence while falling wildly in love with their own lives and attracting healthy relationships. If you like what you heard today and you want to see if you're fit to work with us, go to bethanydotson.com/talk. That's bethanydotson.com/talk and book a call to speak with us today. We'll get on the phone for about 45 minutes and get you crystal clear on 3 things. The real reason you keep attracting dysfunctional relationships, even if you know better or even if you've done tons of work on yourself. What you really want in a relationship, how you want to feel emotionally every single day in your life, and what lifestyle changes you want to make. And then number 3, the exact strategy you need to be using to get there. Again, healing trust issues, codependency, and a lifelong pattern does not happen without expert guidance. We've helped hundreds of women across the country heal complex trauma, codependency, and have the healthiest relationships ever, both with themselves and with others. Go to bethanydotson.com/talk to book your call today. I'll see you on the next episode.